Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
There is perhaps no tale in biblical literature as simultaneously awe-inspiring and enigmatic as the story of David and Goliath. It is a story of courage and faith, of a shepherd boy armed only with a sling and 5 stones confronting a warrior so monstrous in stature that his very presence spread fear among seasoned soldiers. The name Goliath has since become synonymous with overwhelming odds, a symbol of seemingly insurmountable challenges. But beyond the moral and theological implications, the legend of Goliath tantalizes with another, deeper question. How large was he really? For centuries, theologians, historians, archaeologists, and anthropologists have puzzled over the physical dimensions of this ancient warrior. Was he truly a giant, as many translations suggest, or is his size the result of linguistic confusion, scribal error, or cultural embellishment? In this article, we embark on a historical journey through ancient manuscripts, regional folklore, comparative anatomy, and archaeological finds to determine the true size of Goliath and what that means for how we interpret the world of the ancient Near East. The oldest source of the Goliath narrative is the Hebrew Bible, specifically the first book of Samuel, written during the monarchic period of Israel's history, likely between the 10th and 7th centuries BCE, though the text underwent various redactions and edits over the centuries. According to 1 Samuel 17 verse 4, Goliath's height is described as 6 cubits and a span. The standard cubit in ancient Israel measured about 18 inches, while a span measured roughly 9 inches. This would place Goliath at approximately 9 feet 9 inches tall, or nearly 3 meters, an extraordinary height by any human standard even today. Yet this figure is not consistent across all ancient manuscripts. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in the mid-20th century in Qumran, have offered new insights into earlier versions of biblical texts. One of the most intriguing finds is the Samuel scroll, labeled 4 Sam, which diverges from the later Masoretic text by stating Goliath's height as 4 cubits and a span. That would make him roughly 6 feet 9 inches tall, a large but not implausible stature for a warrior, especially by the standards of ancient Israelite men, who average around 5 feet 3 inches in height. This discrepancy between 6 cubits and 4 cubits has led many scholars to re-evaluate the tradition of Goliath's monstrous size. The Greek Septuagint, the earliest Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible made by Jewish scholars in Alexandria in the 3rd to 2nd centuries BCE, also records Goliath's height as 4 cubits and a span, aligning with the Dead Sea Scrolls rather than the later Masoretic text. This convergence between two independent traditions strongly suggests that the shorter height was part of an earlier textual tradition. It is quite possible that later scribes, either intentionally or by error, modified the measurement to 6 cubits to amplify the drama of the tale or to conform to a developing tradition of exaggeration within heroic literature. In the ancient world, the figure of the giant was a recurring motif. From the Nephilim of Genesis, described as the sons of God, mating with the daughters of men, producing mighty offspring, to Greek mythologies' titans and cyclopes, tales of towering humanoids permeated the ancient imagination. These narratives were not always literal but often metaphorical, serving to represent chaos, divine wrath, or foreign threat. In Goliath's case, as a Philistine champion and a descendant of the Rephaim, an ancient race believed to be giants, his stature becomes symbolic of the existential threat posed by Israel's coastal enemies. The Philistines themselves were a people of Aegean origin, part of the so-called Sea Peoples who settled along the southern coast of Canaan in the 12th century BCE. Archaeological excavations in Philistine cities such as Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron have revealed material culture that reflects their Aegean ancestry, Mycenaean-style pottery, architectural motifs, and even burial customs. Interestingly, Gath, cited as Goliath's hometown, has yielded evidence of unusually large building structures and storage jars. Some have suggested that these artifacts could indicate a class of physically larger or more robust individuals, although no skeletal remains have yet proven the existence of a population of true giants. However, individual gigantism is not outside the realm of biological possibility. Medical conditions such as acromegaly, a hormonal disorder resulting from the overproduction of growth hormone, can cause excessive growth and extreme height. The condition often stems from a benign tumor on the pituitary gland. It can result in a range of symptoms: enlarged hands and feet, facial deformities, and joint issues. It is tempting to speculate that Goliath may have suffered from such a disorder, which would explain his great size as well as his seemingly slow movements and susceptibility to a projectile weapon. Some scholars point to the fact that David struck Goliath in the forehead with a stone, potentially exploiting poor eyesight or coordination, common symptoms of acromegaly, as evidence of such a condition. But the biblical story may also reflect a deeper geopolitical and cultural conflict, dramatized in personal terms. The Philistines were technologically advanced for their time, with superior metallurgy and weaponry. The account of Goliath's bronze helmet, coat of mail, greaves, and javelin of iron is not just a description of a man, a statement about the military superiority of Israel's enemies. In contrast, David, armed only with a sling, a shepherd's tool, embodies the underdog status of the early Israelites, who saw their survival as dependent not on arms or armor, but on divine favor. The description of Goliath's immense size may have served to heighten this contrast, metaphorizing Philistine power in the form of a larger-than-life figure. Interestingly, similar tales appear in surrounding cultures. In the Egyptian tale of the doomed prince, giants and serpents figure prominently as obstacles the hero must overcome. In Ugaritic myth, the warrior Baal battles monstrous foes that stand in for cosmic disorder. These stories reflect a shared cultural repository in the ancient Near East where size and strength were often narrative devices, emphasizing the stakes of a given hero's mission. It is likely that the Goliath story, while rooted in a historical setting, borrows from these broader traditions to craft a tale of theological and national significance. As the Davidic narrative gained centrality in Israelite historiography, especially during the reign of King Josiah in the 7th century BCE and later during the Babylonian exile, the mythic dimensions of Israel's founding heroes became increasingly pronounced. David was no longer just a king, but a messianic prototype. Goliath, by contrast, became the archetypal enemy, the uncircumcised outsider defeated by the chosen one. In such a context, exaggerating the size of Goliath served a political and religious purpose, underscoring the miraculous nature of David's victory and, by extension, Israel's survival against all odds. In the centuries following the composition of the Hebrew Bible, later Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions continued to reinterpret Goliath's stature. The Jewish Talmud treats him as a literal giant, while early church fathers like Origen and Augustine offered allegorical readings, seeing Goliath as representing sin, death, or the devil himself. Islamic tradition also preserves the tale, with the Quran referring to Goliath as Jalut, defeated by the young David through divine support. Though the Quran omits specific measurements, Islamic commentaries often describe Jalut as a giant, further cementing the image of Goliath as more than merely human. Modern popular culture has inherited these traditions with little question. Goliath is routinely depicted as a towering brute, 10 feet tall or more, in movies, children's books, and religious illustrations. These depictions, while dramatic, obscure the more nuanced reality suggested by earlier texts and historical investigation. If the original manuscripts point to a Goliath who was around 6 feet 9 inches tall, yes, but not a literal giant, then the story of David's victory becomes no less miraculous, but perhaps more human. It becomes a story not just of divine intervention, but of courage, intelligence, and strategic insight against formidable odds. Ultimately, the true size of Goliath may never be known with complete certainty. Yet what the historical record does offer is a glimpse into how stories are shaped, reshaped, and transmitted through generations. Whether Goliath was a towering anomaly, a symbol of foreign oppression, or a mythologized warrior remembered for his armor and arrogance, his role in the biblical narrative remains profound. His defeat at the hands of David continues to inspire and provoke, not because of how large he was, but because of what he represented and what it meant to bring him down.